Nerds, we're back for another breakdown of Only Murders in the Building, diving into Season 4, Episode 3. This week's Episode 2 for the Road continues the quirky mystery-solving antics with a few new characters joining the fun. But does the episode maintain the momentum from last week? Let's dive into it right now. Welcome back to the Nerdzilla Show. I'm Nathan. As always, if you want to jump ahead of this intro to my analysis or ratings, see the chapter links below. So at this point, I have seen all 7 episodes sent to critics. I still don't know who did it, but of course I have more clues than most people. So the 3rd episode of season 4, it should be posted on September 10th. As always, the show balances humor, mystery, and those iconic guest appearances. Let's see how it all played out this week. The spoiler-free logline for this episode is, in 2 for the Road, Charles, Oliver, and Mabel begrudgingly pair off with new investigators. Actors Eugene Levy, Zach Galifianakis, and Eva Longoria. All right, let's start breaking down this episode. Spoilers ahead. As I alluded to in my spoiler-free review of the episode, if you haven't seen that, there's a link above. 2 for the Road is a British romantic comedy from 1967. Just like the previous couple episodes, the title is a movie. The film explores the evolving relationship between a married couple over 12 years, showcasing the ups and downs. The narrative is non-linear, jumping back and forth between different points in the relationship, from the first meeting to later years when the marriage is strained. As I mentioned, the title has less to do with this episode. The plot of the movie has less to do with this episode than the previous 2 movies that were used as titles, but I think they used it basically to indicate the joining of the actors portraying the trio with the trio in this episode. So we start this episode in Charles's apartment. Zach Galifianakis gives a voiceover about finding a character akin to a detective finding a killer, zooming in on the murder board. You build the character piece by piece, physical qualities, skills, special talents, motivations, and we have on the murder board, there's the person was strong enough to carry Zaz. The skills is that they're a sniper and they possibly hate Charles. In the basement, we see the FBI with trays of the remains and also artificial parts. In the vacant Dudinoff apartment, the FBI is taking evidence from the apartment and it looks like they found a bullet casing. Zach rejects his acting teaching and he says acting is easy. Then we go to Charles's apartment again, and Detective Williams comes in to give them information because the FBI has taken over the case. Oliver and Charles are surprised that she possibly likes them, and she gets Mabel's name wrong when she's trying to get them to focus. She does her Law and Order monologue. The feds think that Jan has something to do with the murder and she hired someone because she was in jail, and they think she went to Florida because of orchestras and sex toy shops. She said the shooter is very good. They left a single 300 Wing Mag casing in Dudinoff's apartment, 14F. He's a retired professor, so that's a clue I don't think we got last week. The neighbors say that he's in Portugal, which Mabel says is suspicious, and Williams calls Mabel again by the wrong name and agrees. This is the point that I was making last week, that Spain is right there, which is what Williams says, but again, I don't know if it means anything. The neighbors were all busy playing card games when they heard the gunshot, probably the Oh Hell game, except for Roddy Thurper, the Christmas freak. Zaz's phone has been turned off, but they are reviewing CCTV in the area. Charles doesn't think Jan killed Zaz. Williams agrees, but she also doesn't think that Zaz was the target, and Charles wonders if someone over in the West Tower could hate him enough to kill him. Mabel says don't tell them not to investigate, and Williams jokes that yeah, after 3 seasons she got that, which of course is a nod to the actual show they were watching and also their podcast. Charles says even if he was the target, he has to tap in to solve this for Zaz, referencing the previous episode. Then actors Levy, Galifianakis, and Longoria enter the room, and Williams is taken by Galifianakis. Levy does the Bravos catchphrase, and then we get the credits. Back in his apartment after the credits, Longoria informs him that the brothers-sisters, the directors of the movie, thought it would be good for them to follow them for the day to do a character study. Again, probably what the title of the episode is referring to. Zach is not particularly enthusiastic about the idea because he doesn't really like Oliver. Levy is still very enamored with Charles because of his Bravos role. He thinks he's a complex man. Oliver makes a joke about that, and Longoria says she's been practicing her Mabel. Mabel rebuffs because there's a new murder, and Longoria thinks that they're gonna solve the murder murder in a day. Williams is attracted to Galifianakis, as I said, and incredulous that Zach is going to be playing Oliver in the movie. She doesn't want an introduction, but she does say if they let anything happen to him, she's going to kill him, and then she leaves. Quick side note, I think she's the only one in this room of all these very distinguished actors who actually has an Academy Award outright. Steve Martin has an honorary one. Anyway, Mabel and Charles don't with the actress, but Oliver wants to spend some time with Zach to win him over, and Charles is flattered by Levy and falters because he compliments his history of wood, and Mabel is frustrated. We cut to a scene where Longoria is doing a monologue, observing Mabel, saying that she wished she had a home, but Mabel corrects her and says that she is looking at the apartments because that's where the shot was fired, and comments on her drinking at 10 a.m. Longoria says she's getting into character. Mabel again corrects her, and however Longoria says her version of Mabel is a tableau of vices. This is what I was talking about earlier on in my review when I said there are some character interactions here that just drag on a little bit too much and are super annoying. Feel like Galifianakis and Longoria are the most annoying in this episode. But anyway, Charles gives an update to the group, and he says the Winchester 300 Magnum, which might be another clue, developed in the 1960s, is the most popular cartridge amongst hunters. Brags to Levy, learned that on Bravos, and Levy is actually able to quote the episode in the title. Oliver records something for the podcast, and Zach comments that he does a bunch of hacky jokes. So then there's a bunch of speculation about who the murderer is. They talk about Vince Fish, wonder if the eye patch is actually conjunctivitis or a bruise from the recoil of a gun. Longoria says they've solved the killer, and her Mabel is very confident. Mabel thinks he's not strong enough to carry as his body, but the Christmas guy, Roddy Thurper, is really fit. Longoria says her character found the killer and moves Roddy's name over, and also says that her Mabel can admit when she's wrong. Charles says that he's got everyone to sign a petition banning Christmas trees because they are a fire hazard. This is a possible motive for Roddy. Not really a clue because we get some resolution on that in this episode. Effie's to be believed. Out of town, the night of Zach's death, again, Effie's to be believed. However, Mabel says they found tinsel by the window. Zach makes a hacky joke about Roddy and Rudolph to make fun of Oliver. Charles thinks it's Vince. Oliver, sensing Zach's contempt, suggests everyone pair off so he can spend some time with Zach to try to win him over. Mabel and Eva take Roddy, and Charles and Eugene take Vince, and Oliver and Zach go off to monitor the ham radio in his apartment. Later in Charles's apartment, Eugene and Charles are playing their accordion, thinking through how to approach Vince to get his eye patch off to see if there's an injury. Eugene suggested Charles asks for a glass of water. Then Eugene tells a joke, and Charles spits in Vince's face to get the eye patch off. Then he takes the idea back as stupid and confesses he's nervous and flatters Charles. Charles says he has an idea to get the eye patch off. And then we cut to the kitchen where Eva speaks to Mabel about the plan for Roddy, and she says that she'd like to stay away from sexual manipulation even though she's really good at it. Mabel starts to tell Eva that she doesn't want her help, and Eva asks if she's attached to her name because it's an old person's name, and she suggests Mabel. Mabel rebuffs her and says she's going to go to Roddy's to see if the tinsel they found in the cypress nest matches his decorations, and Eva doesn't like the snooping idea and wants to just press his buttons. Mabel finally tells her that she doesn't want her help or she works alone, and then Eva leaves. In Oliver's apartment, Oliver tries to reset his relationship with Zach. He suggests going through his wardrobe to help him get into character, and Zach rebuffs him. Harb comes to help with the ham radio from the Dudenoff apartment, and also he comes with the pig, and Howard doesn't like Zach. Zach thinks he has the Oliver character down, but he fails that Oliver quiz. Then over in Laconia West, Mabel heads over to Roddy's apartment to question him, but Ava's already there, and Ava's annoyed that Mabel is there. Elsewhere in Arconia West, Charles and Eugene show up to Vince's apartment with eye patches. Vince asks them about the eye patches, and they invite themselves in. They give him a story about eye drops, but Vince passes because he said he's tried everything. Then they improv a story to try to convince him, but he goes into the bathroom to put the eye drops in. Back in Roddy's apartment, Roddy brings in some protein eggnog, which Mabel and Ava both hate, and Mabel asks him about the tinsel, but Perfect Strangers theme starts to play over his ham radio. This seems to be a clue. Roddy goes into the other room, and Ava thinks it's a bust because there's no tinsel, but Mabel clocks a gun on the wall and the ham radio as a clue. She thinks he hid the tinsel because Ava told him they were looking for clues. Ava wants to provoke a reaction so she can get to her dinner with Roger Federer, Michelle Obama, and other people. Back over in Oliver's apartment, Oliver and Zach are going through his old photo album, and he tells him his dream was to have a film made about him when he was a kid, and Zach is dismissive. This is another part of the slow, kind of like annoying part of the episode that I was mentioning in my review. A good portion of the stuff with Zach and Oliver probably could have been cut for me. Zach does ask whether any of the stories are true, and Oliver says the key to an Oliver Putnam story is that you want it to be true, and it takes place between 1960 and 1980 with a celebrity you are shocked to find out is still alive in a nightclub that's now a Applebee's. Then Zach tries to mimic Oliver in the mirror. Then there's a Perfect Strangers montage, which is admittedly funny, where Zach follows around Oliver trying to mimic him. Back in Vince's apartment, Eugene is concerned that Charles doesn't have a plan for when Vince comes back, and he's potentially in a murderer's apartment. Eugene asks for a glass of water, falling back on the plan he came up with earlier, but Charles doesn't want to do the spectate because he's concerned that Vince wants to kill him, so Eugene does it, and Vince punches him in his face, and they get to see Vince's very infected eye. Back at Roddy's apartment, Ava's dinner plans get pushed up to 6:30, so she starts to provoke Roddy by breaking things and insulting his eggnog. She points the gun on the wall at him and accuses him of shooting Charles. Roddy confesses that he hates Christmas and he just made it his brand because it helped his fitness influencer videos. His parents are ashamed of him. He shows the nidolits on his abs. I feel like while Camille is in this kind of shape, he's going out of his way to show off his body in any role he takes, which I'm not mad at. He probably can't eat anything interesting, so there has to be some benefit to this, right? He then asks them to not tell anyone about hating Christmas. Mabel agrees and asks him about the tinsel, and Roddy says tinsel is highly flammable, so we don't know what this is, and it's still a mystery, so this is another clue. Mabel apologizes for Ava shooting his gun, and Ava says that Michelle Obama will see his TikTok if that's any consolation. Back in Oliver's apartment, Zach and Oliver return, where Howard is still monitoring the ham radio. With a pig, Zach tells a Oliver Putnam joke/story correctly, and he gets a call and excuses himself. Howard reports that he heard the Perfect Strangers theme song. Again, another clue here. We've heard it a couple times now. Oliver and Howard spy on Zach's call, where he tells his agent that he's wasting his time on Oliver and calls Oliver one-dimensional or narcissist. Then he notices he's being observed. Howard tells Zach off and tells him that Oliver humiliates himself over and over again and never gives up. He gets his relationship, for example, 6 months, and Zach starts to turn around. He calls him a techno-colored cockroach that refuses to die, and Zach says he'll immortalize Oliver as a real tragic figure. Back in Vince's apartment, Eugene's experience with Charles brings him off his pedestal, which gives him ease about playing him because he's just as he says, chicken shit as he is. Vince says that he can't believe that they think that he killed their friend, given that he can't even kill his infection. Charles confesses he always thought Vince hated him, and Vince always thought Charles hated him, and they bond over being awkward. Eugene hugs Vince and directs Charles' attention to a photo of the group of Westies, but there's a face scratched out, someone holding the pig next to Roddy and holding Roddy's hand. Still over on Arconia West in the hallway, Ava says she's going to skip the part where she was wildly wrong when she tells her story at dinner. Mabel admits that she was somewhat helpful because she might have wasted weeks thinking Roddy had a motive. Maybe Ava's version of Mabel approach wasn't too bad, and Mabel goes to the Dudenoff apartment following Ava's lead. And then Ava smiles back at her. In the Dudenoff apartment, Mabel inspects the apartment and looks up information about squatters' rights. In Charles's apartment, near the end of the episode, Charles and Vince wave to each other across the courtyard from the windows in their apartments, and then Mabel texts Charles to come over and motions to him from the Dudenoff apartment window, the West Tower. In the Dudenoff apartment, Oliver and Charles arrive with the pig. Mabel doesn't believe Dudenoff is in Portugal. She figures if he finds out she's squatting, he'll have to show his face to kick her out, and Charles is concerned he could be the killer. Oliver approves of the squatting, and he tells another Oliver Putnam story about squatting. Mabel thinks it'll be good for the case, and she needs a place to stay anyway, because if you remember, she was with Oliver in the first episode. Charles worries about her there, and Mabel says that she worries about him all the time, and this way they can watch each other across the courtyard. Mabel starts to sing the theme song to Perfect Strangers, and then Oliver mentions Howard's report saying meet at 445. Charles tells them them about the photo with the crossed out person holding Roddy's hand, and Oliver thinks the 445 is a frequency on the ham radio. They go over to the ham radio and tune to 455, and a woman answers. They ask her about Dudanoff and who's after Charles. She says the last person who came around asking questions was killed, and she warns them that if they don't drop it, they'll be next. So that's pretty much it for the episode. Have you seen Two for the Road? What did you think of the episode's guest stars and the tie-ins to the mystery? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like and share and subscribe for more in-depth analysis of TV and film. See you in the next one, guys. Bye.